Hello and welcome to the 7th match of the March Madness tournament series. Today, 4-color control will be facing Golgari Graveyard. We will be playing out the Golgari side, while Yurtle will be on control. In game 1 we keep a perfectly acceptable opening hand, which has a turn 1 Guildgate. We pass a turn, opponent has a tri-land. Passes a turn, we play Satyr Wayfinder revealing 2 lands, a Spider Spawning and an Assistant. We pass a turn and their opponent plays a Quicken just to draw a card and another tri-land. And here we can play out the Assistant, revealing 3 creatures, so we hit the full amount and attack for 1, putting the opponent down to 19 life. Wall of Omens is going to stop our Assistant, and another tri-land. We can attack here but only deal 1 damage, putting the opponent down to 18 life, and a Masked Admirers draws into another one. And here our opponent can control the board by casting an Anger of the Gods, which will exile all our creatures, so we don't get any value from the Admirers or the Spider Spawning in our graveyard. We replay another Admirers, draw a land and pass a turn. Our opponent passes with 5 mana available, so could have a counterspell up. As we play our Satyr Wayfinder, revealing 2 creatures and 2 lands, we attack. Our opponent does block, and we pass a turn, and that's a Think Twice and a flashback Think Twice to draw a total of 2 cards. Opponent plays another tapped land, and will play another Wall of Omens, which draws a card, and will provide another blocker. We try to resolve Blackaworm, and that works, and another Think Twice to draw a card. Our opponent plays a land and casts a Ground Assault, taking out the Blackaworm and drawing us a card. Passes a turn. Here we have a lot of options available. We could go for the Demon or the Shieldred. Instead we flashback a Spider Spawning, making a bunch of Spider tokens and pass a turn. Opponent goes for an end of turn Think Twice, and here he will play a Courier's Capsule and passes a turn with a lot of mana available. We draw another land and decide to attack with everyone. Opponent takes 7, dropping down to 11, and we play out our Necromancer's Assistant as well as a Satyr Wayfinder to dodge possible counterspells. Our opponent activates the Courier's Capsule, draws 2 cards and deploys a Baneslayer Angel, and passes a turn. Here we decide to attack with everyone, since our attack is still profitable even though our opponent does have the Baneslayer in play. So the Baneslayer blocks the Assistant, but our opponent will still take 3 damage, dropping down to 8. And here we decide to flashback another Spider Spawning, but it gets dissolved. So we play another land and pass the turn. And here our opponent plays another Courier's Capsule and passes a turn. We decide to attack first, and our opponent is going to block once again, but still take 2 damage, dropping down to 6. So we decide to play out the Runescar Demon, but it gets countered by Traumatic Visions. So we pass a turn, our opponent activates the Capsule to draw 2 more cards, and plays a Guildgate, passes a turn. So now we draw another land, so we only have Shieldred left in hand. We decide to attack one more time with everyone, but our opponent only takes 1 damage, so drops down to 5 life. Plays a land and passes a turn as we draw our Demon, which cannot kill the Baneslayer since it has protection from demons. A Voyage's End on the wall just to replay it and draw another card, and another land. Opponent passes a turn, and here we decide not to play into a counterspell, so we pass a turn. Inspiration draws our opponent 2 cards and another land, and this is going to be an Obelisk of Alara, which can slowly start winning the game for the opponent. So we decide to play out our Demon, which can kill a wall. And now we can attack once again with everyone, since we can deal some damage. Opponent will block and activate the Obelisk to gain life, and our opponent will drop down to 9 at the end of the transaction. Now we try to resolve Shieldred, and that works. Opponent sacrifices one of the walls, attacks with the Angel to gain some life, and plays a Planar Cleansing, which will also get rid of his own Obelisk, so he activates it first to gain some more life. We can try to resolve our Gristlebrand, but our opponent will counter it with a Traumatic Visions, but we still get back the Masked Admirers and played out, which draws us a Satyr Wayfinder. Our opponent plays a Wall of Omens to draw a card and plays out a Courier's Capsule, passes a turn, and now we can play out our Satyr Wayfinder, revealing 2 lands and a Spider Spawning, which we try and cast here. Our opponent activates the Capsule in response and will counter the Spider Spawning with a Dissolve. But now we have Rescue from the Underworld available. Our opponent goes for a Think Twice to draw a card, flashes it back, and is now tapped out, so we go ahead and cast our Rescue from the Underworld, getting back a Gristlebrand. which might have been a mistake, as we are running out of cards in our library, and maybe Shieldred would have been better. Opponent does not do anything significant, and we get back our Griselbrand, so we are only left with 9 cards in our library. So instead of activating the Griselbrand's ability, we just cast a bunch of Elvish Visionaries. We don't have any relevant cards left in our library except for a Dead Reckoning, which can return a card from our graveyard. Anger of the Gods takes out the small creatures, and Ground Assault will try and take out Griselbrand. We cast a Rescue from the Underworld in response, but Negate will stop that, and our opponent plays an Elixir of Immortality, which will prevent him from being decked, and will also shuffle his cards back into his library. We draw a lot of lands here, and Kozilek will start getting the job done, as we have a Graveborn Muse, which is not very good at this point with so few cards left in our library. Elixir gets activated, opponent attacks us with the Kozilek. We sacrifice 4 lands and take 12, dropping down to 10. The Muse triggers, draws an extra card at the cost of 1 life, but it's another Muse which we can't cast, otherwise it would deck us. So the Eldrazi attacks, we sacrifice 4 lands, have to block it this time around, otherwise we're dead. And we draw Dead Reckoning, which is the last relevant card in our deck. It can get back the Shadowborn Demon, which could kill Kozilek next turn. The damage takes out the Wall of Omens, but our opponent has a Voyage's End, returning the Graveborn Muse to our hand and attacks us with the Eldrazi, so 4-color control takes game 1 over Golgari Graveyard. In game 2 we mulligan our opening hand, which has no green sources, and keep a very good second hand, leading with Golgari Guildgate. Opponent leads with a gate as well. Here we decide to play the Visionary first, drawing into an Assistant. We pause the turn, opponent plays another tap land, and here we decide to attack first, putting the opponent down to 19, and play the Satyr Wayfinder, revealing 2 rescues, 1 creature and a land, so we play the Guildgate and pause. Opponent plays a Quicken just to draw a card, and a Wall of Omens will block one of our creatures and draw another card, and another tapped land for the opponent. We attack, dealing only 1 damage, putting the opponent down to 18, and play the Masked Admirers, drawing into a land, and here our opponent will play another tapped land, pause the turn, and here we decide to attack first. Opponent blocks the Admirers, taking 2 down to 16, and here we decide to play out the Necromancer's Assistant, which gets countered, which tells us our opponent does not have an Anger of the Gods in hand. Opponent plays another land and passes. Here we attack. The opponent takes 2 damage, dropping down to 14, and we play a Spider Spawning, which does resolve, only generating 2 spider tokens though. Opponent casts a Think Twice and flashes it back, drawing 2 cards total, and here our opponent does have the Anger of the Gods, which he must have drawn recently, and we draw another Spider Spawning, which is not great since most of our creatures are exiled. So instead we decide to play out the Runescar Demon, and at first we want to get a Graveborn Muse, but then we realize we might want to get a second Runescar Demon, but we can't unselect the Graveborn Muse in time, so the timer runs out and gives us a random card, which in this case is Rescue from the Underworld. Opponent has to bounce the demon to our hand, which is not very good value, so here we try to replay it once again, but are expecting a counterspell, and it does happen. Traumatic Visions will counter it. We play another land and pause the turn. Opponent casts a Quicken just to draw a card, plays another tap land, passes a turn, and here we can play out our Satyr Wayfinder and follow it up with a Spider Spawning. Wayfinder reveals 3 lands and an Admirers, so we decide to play the Plakaworm instead. Opponent casts an Inspiration to draw 2 cards, but the Plakaworm will resolve, and here our opponent can play a Ground Assault to take out the Plakaworm, which will draw another card, and he also plays an Elixir of Immortality. We draw another land, and here we decide to go for the Spider Spawning, which will resolve, giving us 5 spider tokens, but also keeps our Rescue from the Underworld up. Opponent passes a turn after activating the Elixir, and plays a Baneslayer Angel. Here we can cast a Rescue from the Underworld, but it gets negated, so instead we try to resolve Shieldred Whispering One, which will get back our Masked Admirers as well. So we pause the turn, Shieldred activates, Wall of Omens gets sacrificed, but Ground Assault takes out the Shieldred, and here we draw a Dead Reckoning, which is very good, but first we play out the Masked Admirers, which resolves, and now we can cast a Dead Reckoning, returning Shieldred and taking out the Baneslayer Angel, and we cast a Visionary to draw the Shieldred right away, attack with our spiders, putting the opponent down to 14 life, and our opponent has very few resources remaining as he plays another Wall of Omens with only one card left in hand, and now we feel confident that we can take this game as we attack with everyone. Opponent takes 6, dropping down to 8, and we play Shieldred. Our opponent has to sacrifice the Wall of Omens and does not have any plays, so here we can get back the Runes card with Shieldred, which will get us Craterhoof Behemoth, which we will cast, which will give our team +10/+10, so this attack is approximately for 1,000,000 damage, so it's now 1 apiece, and everything will be decided in the third and final game. The winner will advance to the next round, while the loser will be eliminated from the tournament. In the third game we keep our opening hand and play Golgari Guildgate, and our opponent is gonna respond with a Tri-land. We play the Visionary, which will draw into a Swamp, which is a second black source, which is important. Opponent plays a Courier's Capsule, which he can activate to draw 2 cards at the cost of 2 mana. We play the Assistant, which reveals 2 creatures and a land, which is good, and we attack for 1, putting the opponent down to 19 life, and pass a turn. Here our opponent plays a Seaside Citadel and passes, and we can attack for 4 damage. Opponent has a Voyage's End to return the Assistant to our hand to buy some life, and we play the Admirers instead to draw another Swamp, pass a turn, and opponent has another tap land, passes a turn, and here we have a lot of options, but we decide to attack first. Opponent takes it, so we play out the Assistant once again, revealing some more creatures, and we pass a turn. Opponent activates the Capsule to draw 2 more cards. Our opponent plays a second red source and can cast an Anger of the Gods, which will exile all our creatures, but now we have a window to resolve a spider spawning, making 4 spider tokens, and we pass a turn. Opponent has a Traumatic Visions to cycle to grab a Plains, and here he can cast an Obelisk of Alara, which can gain him 5 life a turn. So we attack for 4, putting the opponent down to 10 life, play Satyr Wayfinder, revealing some more lands and some more creatures, and now we can cast a Rescue from the Underworld, returning a Runescar Demon, sending away the Wayfinder. Opponent has to pass a turn. We get back the Demon and the Wayfinder, revealing a whole bunch of interesting creatures. Now we can get a spider spawning with our Runescar Demon, which will get us 2 activations, one normal one and another flashback one. And here the opponent will activate the Obelisk of Alara with the black mode, giving a creature -2/-2, killing a spider. So he only takes 3 damage, down to 7. We decide to flashback a spider spawning, making a bunch of spiders. Opponent casts a Quicken, can't find an answer, so has to activate the Obelisk and cast a Planar Cleansing to destroy his own Obelisk of Alara after gaining 5 life, but now we can resolve whatever we want, and we decide to go with a spider spawning, making a lot of spider tokens, and we pass a turn. Opponent has to have another sweeper, but he does not find it as he passes a turn, so we attack with everyone, putting the opponent down to 3 life, and we pass a turn without casting anything, as we still have a rescue up. Opponent does not find the sweeper, so he passes a turn and we can simply attack with all our spiders for the win. So Golgari Graveyard takes game 3 and will advance to the next round, where it will face the winner of the next match, which will be the final match of the first round. So I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.